Now, I'm about to chat on a subject that most people might still consider a sensitive subject, but it shouldn't be, because menstruation is a natural fact of life, and having insight on how it works helps us understand it that much better. Having conversations with industry professionals opens up ways to understand the menstrual cycle, how it works, and the biggest issues that women face with their menstrual cycles. And here to help us and give us more information on the workings of the menstrual cycle is gynecologist Dr. Shimange Matsuse. Hi, Doc. How are you today?
Hi, Dumi. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely well. Now, I'm talking about the menstrual cycle, and I know a lot of young girls are still also trying to figure out how it works, what it's about. Do you want to just break it down for us? What exactly is a menstrual cycle? And do you want to just take us through those 4 phases of it?
Okay, so basically a menstrual cycle is a physiological process that happens in a young woman's life when they go through puberty. And what that basically encompasses is that she will go through a period within a month where she'll end up bleeding. And what's important to understand about that is that there's different parts to the menstrual cycle. It's all under hormonal control. And what's really important is that there's the egg that grows during the menstrual cycle, and then there's the lining of the womb, which also grows and sheds during your menstrual cycle. So that's basically it. And if you get pregnant, you don't bleed. If you don't get pregnant, then that's when the lining of the womb sheds.
I went to school, and one of the things that we were taught is the cycle and all of that. But do you want to just elaborate how it actually works? What then happens, throughout the entire cycle itself?
Okay, so let's just say from day 1, right? Then you start bleeding. And then during that process, when you start bleeding, then your hormones will organize themselves in a certain way where the small follicle or the egg starts to grow, preparing itself for ovulation and pregnancy should you fertilize. And at the same time, that lining of the womb called the endometrium, it also starts growing, preparing itself to either receive a baby or to not receive a baby. So this typically will happen between every 28 days, but then between 21 and 35 days is considered normal, and you bleed for your 3 to 7 days. And for me, more than anything, in terms of understanding it, is really knowing what it is, what happens, what can potentially happen. In other words, you can fall pregnant once you start menstruating. But if you don't fall pregnant, it does not mean that it's abnormal. It could just be other things. But more importantly, just to know your cycle.
Now, that is very important, what you've mentioned. And the one thing I've noticed, though, is that everyone has a different experience when it comes to their cycle. I know of people that have their cycle that is much longer than others. Some people bleed for longer, some people bleed for shorter. How would you suggest women learn more about their menstrual cycle?
So I really love this generation this time that we're all getting older in. So just download an app. There are so many apps. You can pay for it, it's free, or you can just use your traditional diary. And you need to track your menstruation. It is so important. I always speak about the 21 to 35 days, which is your length of your cycle. So from the first day you bleed up to the last day just before you bleed again, and the amount of days that you bleed for. And within that menstrual tracking, you need to track anything that's abnormal, something that does not sit well. So whether you bleed heavily, whether you have period pains, and so forth. So that's really it. If you can do that, you've already done a lot. You've done a lot for us when you come and consult, because that's the information that we're going to want.
You've touched on something very important by talking about normal. And I know a lot of people have gone with different issues, have had different issues with their cycle. I, for one, didn't really struggle with menstrual, or rather with period pains before having my child. But since having him, I've got so many pains that I just can't get rid of. What are some of the issues, or rather the biggest issues that women face with their cycle, and what is normal, what is not normal?
Things like period pains. I always get girls who are like, no, I've had period pains all my life. And I'm like, but that's not normal. You shouldn't be having period pains. And if you do, you must go and seek help and find out what it is. And if it's those period pains that really interfere with your quality of life, where you can't get out of bed in the morning and everyone's like, oh, they already know she's probably on her period because that's always her excuse. No, you need to go and seek help for that. And then obviously there's the heavy menstrual bleeding part of it. Is how much no one's going to really measure how much they're bleeding every month. But you'll know when you're like buying the whole shelf of tampons and pads at a pharmacy that, okay, something is wrong because you shouldn't be using so many sanitary wear during your period. And the other thing is skipping your period. Women are very happy to not have their period up until they actually need to have their period. So my thing is, up until you reach menopause, please just be happy with having your period every month. And if you skip your period for whatever reason, please seek help in terms of that. So that's really the common things that would happen with regards to your menstrual cycle.
Well, thank you so much, Doc. You've literally basically answered so many questions for us and demystified so much and made it such an easy conversation to have, because not many people are able to just openly speak about it. But thank you so much for your time and actually just helping us break it down so much easier.
Thank you for helping me.
Thank you. Now, with Salome, your journey matters. Remember, everybody's journey is different. And if you've got any further questions or concerns about your menstrual cycle, then contact your local female GP or gynecologist.